We are ready for the second round of the NBA playoffs in a series that promises to bring a lot of excitement and a lot of energy and hopefully a lot of great basketball is between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The prize for the Oklahoma City Thunder of being the 1 seed is that they don't have to face either of these teams on the way to that conference finals. So this should be quite the series. And to help break it all down, we have Kirk Evans back on the show and back on the channel for today, joining myself, Jacob, to break things down. We just talked a little bit pre-show, but Mr. Kirk Evans, how about you tell us about the playoffs so far for you and how you've enjoyed the NBA playoffs?
Playoffs have been great, really exciting. I think I like that they've kind of carried down the fouls from the second half of the year. I think the play has been super intense. Defense has been really good. I like hard, intense playoff basketball. That Philly series was amazing, and I think these two, looks like we probably know, assuming Dallas wins this, these two West matchups are going to be really interesting.
Yeah, playoffs as a whole have been great. Wasn't expecting as much fireworks from the Eastern Conference, but we certainly got that. We definitely saw it coming as far as the Western Conference is concerned, and that should continue in this vein as well. Let's just start off with maybe reacting to the first round series. Both teams rather comfortably have advanced to the second round here, but the Nuggets wasn't so surprising. The Timberwolves, it perhaps was. I think the Suns ended up closing at around minus 140 favorites to win this series against the Timberwolves, despite being the lower seed. They don't even win a game. What was it about the Timberwolves in the first round against Phoenix that allowed them to be so successful?
Yeah, well, first off, was Denver a comfortable win? I'm not entirely sure I would agree with that. They did win in 5, though, to be fair, but they were down double digits in every game and ended up having a net of only 2. Minnesota just let Phoenix kind of do what they want to do, shoot mid-range jumpers, and they didn't really let them do anything else on offense. And Minnesota absolutely pummeled Phoenix on the offensive glass, and just kind of were the team they were all regular season. They were the best defensive team in the league this regular season. They just dominated them. They said, Durant, okay, yeah, if you want to go 13 of 21 on a bunch of pull-up middies, that's fine, but we're not going to let anyone else do anything. They were really good on Booker, and they didn't really let Phoenix be like their role players really get going at all, and they kind of just dominated, and they were pretty good on offense as well, which actually wasn't really the case in the regular season. I think points per possession wise, Minnesota, yeah, number 1 in the playoffs. I think they were only around 16th in the regular season. So they kind of just dominated both sides of the ball, were the more physical team. I think people really like this matchup for Phoenix. They went, I think, 4-0 in the regular season, Phoenix versus Minnesota. But yeah, I think they were just the better team, the bigger team, much better defensively. And Phoenix doesn't really like the math game, and Minnesota said, okay, try beating us that way, and they couldn't.
Yep. I very much thought Phoenix had the upper hand in this series leading into it, but yeah, Minnesota's defense took them all the way to a 4-0 series win. Let's shift over now to the other series, which was the Nuggets and the Lakers. You mentioned that it was perhaps a more competitive series than it seemed. The second straight year where we might say that. The Lakers lost in 4 last year, but they actually played pretty well. The Nuggets just have the closers, it seems, to they're experienced. They're NBA champions. They have the closers. They know how to win these games that perhaps the Lakers don't know how to win. But great timing. Live while we're on the show right now. I know this is a Timberwolves Nuggets preview, but you mentioned the Lakers were still moderately competitive here. Nonetheless, they have dismissed head coach Darvin Ham. That report came out just about a minute ago now. We'll get our first reactions here because why not? We're live here. The Lakers, as you said, kept it competitive. Do you think it's fair that Darvin Ham is now no longer the coach? Do you think it's fair on him? Is this the right decision?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that this is the most shocking news when it kind of starts rolling out from Shams. You know, the Lakers are seriously considering this. It was fait accompli either way. This is a tough part of the NBA and the control the agents and the players have. I think we're going to see the same thing with Vogel. Yeah, like I think Ham is probably slightly more to blame than Vogel, but I think both are totally solid coaches. I probably wouldn't fire either of them if it was up to me and I led these organizations. You know, someone has to take the blame. The Lakers' depth was terrible. They didn't really have anyone they could go to. They relied on 2 scoring guards who, it's tough to operate in the playoffs, especially against Denver. And they put up a really good fight, and they could have won that series. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the Lakers were pretty much as good as they should have been this season, and honestly overperformed in that playoff series. So I don't really think he deserves it. But, when someone needs to take the fall, it's often the coach.
Yeah, certainly is, and that might be the case here. Let's shift back now to the series. Nuggets, Timberwolves. We have a super chat coming from one of our Timberwolves fans in the chat, Sean Glenn. Thank you so much for sending that in. Really appreciate that. Sean says, out the gate, go Wolves. So, indeed, many people may want the Timberwolves to win. Anthony Edwards has become a big focus in NBA media, the comparisons to Michael Jordan. Let's just get things started out the gate here and discuss the Timberwolves. The Nuggets come in as favorites for this one. Widely, you can get the Timberwolves in the plus 160 to 170 range. Plus 160 to 170 range. Market has pretty much come to a consensus price on this series. As the underdogs, what do the Timberwolves need to do in this series to overtake the reigning champions?
Yeah, so I think this is actually kind of an interesting position versus last series, because last series the Wolves closed as dogs pretty much because people thought the matchup was bad for them. This is the entirely opposite direction in my books. I think if there's a team that's built to beat the Nuggets, it's the Timberwolves. I think that the series is going to be decided when the Nuggets have the ball, Timberwolves on defense. So obviously the best way to cover Jokić, even though he's obviously going to get his and be really good, is to have a big on him, but have a rim protecting big behind him. That's kind of what all teams have started to go to. Lakers mostly ran that against them last series, but the Lakers didn't have another big. Typically, teams don't really have 2 bigs that start, and when they do, it causes spacing issues. You see that with the Cavs. They can't score at all against Orlando. Minnesota is probably the only team in the league that really doesn't fit that characterization, and they have 3 bigs who will pretty much play the whole time. So Towns is going to start on Jokić and I think probably cover him most of the series. I think I tweeted right before this, I think Towns really is the X factor in this series. It's nice that they have an actual natural spot to play him on defense. I think that last series, the worry was he was going to have to cover Durant, which he didn't do a great job of, but it was fine. But he's a pretty bad defensive player, but he's a fine post defender. He's a big dude. He's strong. And then Gobert will cover Aaron Gordon. So that's kind of the perfect dynamics of what you want. They're going to totally ignore Aaron Gordon. They're going to let Gobert roam. And then McDaniels probably starts on Murray, but they also have Ant to throw out Murray. They can put Conley on KCP and not really worry about that. Denver probably will go at Conley a bit, but he's not a horrible defender, and I don't think Denver really likes to, pick on guys and try getting that switch. So yeah, I think that's really where the series is going to be decided. Can Cat cause enough problems for Jokić? Can he not foul? You saw Ant in that interview post game. I think game 3, he said, "Stop fucking fouling." Like that's what Cat has to do on defense. He has to not foul. He has to trust that Rudy's going to be behind him. And I think they're going to throw a lot of different coverages at Jokić. They can put Gobert on him at points. They can put Cat on him at points. Denver doesn't like shooting a ton of threes. I think they were last in the league in three-point frequency in the regular season. I think at points they're going to throw doubles at Jokić. I think it worked pretty well in the Lakers series when they did that in spots. I think the only real way to try slowing down Jokić is to just continuously change up what you're going to do with them. And then also, you could probably get away with playing Naz Reid and Cat versus Jokić at points if you're getting Gobert a rest, and going 5 out and seeing, can you test Jokić in space when you have 5 guys who can shoot on the floor? Not that Naz Reid is necessarily a 5-alarm fire guy. They'll probably put Jokić on Naz Reid in those lineups. But, try getting Jokić in space. Try making him defend in space and really get Ant coming down on the pick and roll and seeing, can he cover the rim while also covering that three-point shooter. But I really do think this series is going to be decided with Minnesota, the best defensive team in the league. Denver was good on defense this year. I don't think they were the number one offense, but I think that's kind of where they hang their hat. They're probably one of the best half-court offenses in the league, if not the best. So I think that's really where it's going to be decided. Can Gobert as the help defender and Cat as the main guy on Jokic cause him any trouble?
Yeah, Gobert as the weak side defender is an interesting angle for the Timberwolves to play. I agree that they may go that out the gates. You did mention on Twitter regarding Karl-Anthony Towns, as you mentioned, as long as he doesn't take bad fouls, keeps his head on straight, low turnovers, Wolves win this series. Great thought. Do you think Karl-Anthony Towns is good enough to not foul and to stay out of foul trouble, keep himself on the floor?
So obviously he's going to foul Jokic. Jokic is an amazing offensive player. He'll get him in advantages. But, the fouls are when he's on a 1-on-4 and bowls over a guy on a fast break for absolutely no reason, gets called for an offensive foul. Or when he's frustrated and gets the ball in the post against someone he thinks he has a mismatch on, but isn't really a mismatch. That'll probably be like, he'll probably have KCP switched on him at points in the series. I think that's a good matchup, and they should go to that. And Cat's an okay post offensive player, but you'll see Cat load up on these post moves and just drill his shoulder into their chest. That's going to be called an offensive foul every time. Cat on offense as well, he doesn't like making the simple play often. I watched game 1 of this series. I think he had 2 points and 5 turnovers in the first half. He needs to play within himself. Do I think he will? I think that's really the question of the series. I think he was way better in this Phoenix series than he has been in any other playoff series he's been in, but he still was in foul trouble. So I don't know. I think that's a question. I think there's a chance, but if I had to bet on Cat, completely staying out of foul trouble with also the assignment of covering Jokic, I probably would say that's not going to happen based on what we've seen in the past.
But what is good news that they like you said, they have a rotating cast of players that they can throw his way. Question from legit top sports bettor here saying, would you try Ant on Jokic in some spaces? We've seen, I wouldn't necessarily go this direction, but we've seen them go with kind of sturdy forwards against Jokic and have the help defender come in the way. Not really sure if Minnesota need to do that though, because like you said, they have the 2 bigs on the floor already, but maybe not Ant, but do you see them throwing maybe a non-big on Jokic? Like, could McDaniels play him straight up for a little bit?
I don't really see why they would need to do that. I think maybe if they really don't, if offensively it's not going good with like Naz and Gobert or Naz and Cat, maybe they decide they need to do that. But my guess would be if they play McDaniels at the 4, they'll probably go Gobert on Jokic in those minutes. But I actually think that's going to be very limited. I don't think that McDaniels is going to play the 4 much this series. I think they're going to be a pretty significant rotation of Naz, Gobert, and Cat, and I think they'll probably play 2 bigs most of the time that Jokic is on, because that's what they did most of the regular season as well. I think that's what they like to do. Cat can shoot, Naz can shoot some. I don't think the spacing is going to be too bad, and I think you put LeBron on Jokic, or you put Rui Hachimura on Jokic when you don't have another big that you can play to put on Jokic, but you don't want your rim protecting big on them. Minnesota has another big on the floor. They're playing 2 essential centers at most of the time, so I don't really see why they would put, Ant or McDaniels. McDaniels is too skinny, and Ant's too small. He's like 6'4".
On the topic of, you were mentioning how it's going to be a defensive battle for the Timberwolves. You mentioned how they match up there. What are the Nuggets going to have to throw at the Timberwolves to succeed offensively here? Because they are the favorites, but they still need to execute. What's going to be the game plan for Malone's group?
Yeah, so I imagine Jokic starts on Gobert. KCP probably starts on Ant. Aaron Gordon will cover Cat. Denver's a really good defensive team. They're top 10 in defense this year. I think that the matchup for Denver is fine. I think the question is, the Lakers ran a lot of actions, like zoom actions, with LeBron going downhill at Jokic, and Jokic started to struggle a bit with that. Can Gobert's rim pressure cause enough problems for Jokić on those alley-oops? Can Ant find guys? Can he be a really plus passer? I don't think he's really shown that in his career yet. And can Ant's just athleticism and 3-level scoring frustrate Jokić? I think that's kind of the question for Minnesota on offense. When Ant is, running the main guy in the action, can he cause problems for Jokić defensively is really the question, because we haven't seen Jokić really tested with a guy who can get downhill and shoot the 3 off the pick and roll in the playoffs. I don't think of anyone wrong. I don't think we've seen that in the last couple of years. It's kind of Jokic's main issue, defending in space. Minnesota isn't an elite shooting team by any means, so I think Denver will be able to be fine enough on D, and that's kind of why I think the range of outcomes on when Denver has the ball and Minnesota's on D is larger. I think, I don't think Minnesota is going to be an elite offense this series. I think they'll probably be fine. They have enough offense that they'll be fine. Another question is, can Minnesota keep that offensive rebounding going? I'm pretty low on that possibility. Jokić is a monstrous defensive rebounder.
Yeah.
I don't think Minnesota was like the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the regular season. I'll actually check that right here. They dominated Phoenix, but Phoenix, plays pretty small, but behind Nurkic. And they also didn't have Nurkic on for, 18 minutes a game. So I think that's pretty unlikely that Minnesota's able to be that successful on the offensive rebounds. If they are, that's a massive boost to the series. But yeah, I think Ant really putting pressure on Jokić and them maybe trying to get Jokić covering in space with Nas and Cat lineups is really the big question marks. But I think Denver matches up pretty well with Minnesota on the other side of the ball as well.
So we've talked about all the matchups, everything that could go down in this series. What's your prediction on who's going to win? How many games is it going to take them?
If I had to make a prediction, I'll go Wolves in 7. How about that?
Okay.
I've been bearish on Denver. I've really considered pulling a bet. I would definitely have taken the lines that came out immediately. I think it opened like plus 220, plus 200. It's come down. So I actually don't have a bet on this series, but I definitely have heavily considered taking, an off-market plus 175. I like the Wolves here. I think the matchup is going to be really good. And what we haven't talked about, Jamal Murray has a calf injury. Calf injuries don't really get better quickly, and they are very at risk of re-aggravation. And KCP rolled his ankle, and the ankle roll was severe enough that he had to leave the game twice. That being said, I think KCP will be fine. If you can play through an ankle, you'll probably be fine. But if Murray gets hurt, Minnesota immediately gets to being a pretty clear favorite here. Ant also rolled his ankle, actually, I think both ankles in that last Phoenix game. I think he's fine as well. But yeah, I think pretty clearly Denver's injuries, especially Murray's calf, is a big question mark in this series as well. So I'll go Minnesota. If I had to make a bet, it would be on Minnesota, but I have not bet this series.
My prediction will be Nuggets in 7. If I was going to bet on this series, though, I would take Minnesota at plus 170 because I think that's close to be probably really close to plus EV. And not sure Minnesota should be that big of an underdog. Speaking of the betting side of things, though, pre-show you mentioned to me that you do have a bet for this series. What were you interested in taking here?
Yeah, so I actually just took this right before the show. I took Nas Reed over 3.5 rebounds at plus 128. It's pretty widely available at a bunch of even better numbers, I believe. Kind of what I talked about throughout the show. I think Nas Reed's going to play a lot. It was a much less logical fit last series when, Phoenix was playing 0 bigs or 1 big. I think it's kind of the opposite. And then again, like we talked about, if Cat is in foul trouble, I think they want to play 2 bigs. I don't think they're going to go much McDaniels at the 4. So you have some significant upside on minutes there, but I think his minute floor is also pretty high. I think also taking some, alt overs isn't the worst idea in the world, but that's the bet I went with.
So plus 136 at DraftKings is the best number in market. We have the BetStamp app open here. Easily can find the best price in the market. If you're going to sign up to more sportsbooks as well to ensure you're always getting the #1 prices, check out the link that is in the description or pinned in chat to see what's available in your region. And you can support the show along the way in the process of making yourself a better sports bettor. So I'm going to go with Nuggets in 7. You're going to go with Timberwolves in 7. But for game 1, you are going with Naz Reid over 3.5 rebounds. Final question I have before we wrap things up on the conversation of Anthony Edwards, who has certainly ascended himself into one of the very best players in the NBA this season. But I've seen a lot of, I opened up with this, a lot of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant sort of comparisons and discourse. I don't, am I going crazy? How do you feel about these comparisons dropping for him?
Yeah, like I've kind of always thought Ant's overrated, and he's actually proved me wrong throughout his career. So maybe I shouldn't throw too much shade. I thought LaMelo was a better player at
2020 draft.
In the draft. I thought he was getting a ton of hype in the offseason as like the next MVP. I wasn't really sure where that was coming from. But yeah, he's really, really good, but he's not that good. I think he's,
that's
around
sense.
The 10th-ish best player in the league, maybe a bit higher after this playoff run, but he's really good. But
yeah,
he still maybe had his efficiency's not, in the elite tier. He doesn't play with the most offensive, heavy groups where there's tons of spacing, and he's a really good defensive player. So he is very good. I think I saw going around Twitter, like, which players would you start a franchise with over Ant? And I think like the list is pretty clearly Jokic, Wemby, Shea, and Luka, and then he's number 5 on that list. So he is very, very good. But Kobe, Michael, I'm not so sure about.
I've always been very high on Anthony Edwards. Pre-draft 2020, I remember making a lot of money on that draft because I valued Anthony Edwards very highly, and LaMelo Ball was even the night before the draft, LaMelo Ball was favored to go first overall. Regardless, I've been very high on him. I've always really liked him. I would not go as far as, to make these Michael Jordan edits out of him. I think that's taking it a step too far, but he's very good. I agree. Top 10 player in the league. I agree. Fantastic player, but maybe we can pump the brakes just slightly. But if he's going to overthrow the Nuggets in this series, if he's going to pull the Minnesota Timberwolves potentially to NBA conference finals or perhaps an NBA finals, then perhaps we can have some meaningful conversations regarding his status all time. But in terms of like Michael Jordan comparisons, like he's still very young. Let's give it some time. We may never even get there, but certainly we need to give it a little bit more time. But that will do it for the show today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We do plenty of live morning shows with myself and Pips NBA for daily NBA free picks, but we'll have Kirk Evans periodically joining throughout the playoffs as well. And keep a lookout as watch parties will be coming to the channel, hopefully starting next week. Plenty of great content coming at you on the Board YouTube channel, so make sure you are subscribed. Also, please make sure you drop a like on this series preview if you did enjoy along the way, especially if you're tailing the Naz Reid over on rebounds bet that Kirk Evans gave out. We're going to be away for the weekend, but we're back next week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next time.